song, but did y'all experience anything weird recently? Did,
Yeah, Travis got arrested.
Travis got arrested.
Normal. Travis would probably not be arrested at First Baptist Church Anderson if he's preaching anything, period, right?
True.
But what could be some consequences of being a Christian right now, where you are?
You'll lose friends.
You'll lose friends? Really?
I mean, sometimes you lose friends that don't want to do the same thing you are.
Okay.
You get put into more tough situations.
Like what?
Like peer pressure or anything. You know, put pressure on you to do something you want to do that's not Christian.
Okay. Anything else? You get made fun of sometimes. For what? You smile when you said things. What are these things?
Yes.
I'm a youth minister. Tell me.
Yes.
Drugs. It's a different thing.
So they kind of gave them the only job that they could get, which was garbage collection. So these Christians in this area lived in what they called Garbage City. They would actually take their trucks and go pick up all the garbage in Cairo, bring it back to their area, and they had a big, huge garbage dump where they burnt a lot of trash, and then they recycled a whole lot of trash, and they sorted through it themselves. And they actually lived inside this garbage dump. There was huge 4, 5, 6-story buildings built all throughout the garbage dump where these Christians were living. And it was crazy to see this. And we actually got to meet a man inside one of the monasteries that was there who showed us he had a little cross tattoo that the government required. The government requires some sort of identification to know whether you're a Christian or whether you're a Muslim. Really, you're a Muslim unless you have a tattoo. So they have to know that they're Christians, or at least they have to know that this group is Christians. He showed us his tattoo and told us about the conditions and told us about life. But he had this faith that was just incredible. It was amazing to hear him say, we do this, but I still believe in Jesus Christ and that He loves all and that He came for all of us and that we are God's children. And just as, now listen to this, just as our Muslim brothers are. Crazy. That's some kind of interesting faith there in a time of complete trial and tribulation. So this persecution thing is real. It does happen. It happens all over the world. And it happens within the U.S. too, based on religious lines. My point in saying all that is, what do you think? You talked about little things that happen to Christians. You're in Anderson, South Carolina. What do you think the majority of religion is in Anderson, South Carolina? Yeah, absolutely. Christianity. Are there some other minority religions that are present there? Yeah, like what?
Islam, Hindu,
Jewish. I'm sure you have some Latter-day Saints here too. Yeah, there's lots of other groups here as well. What do you think it's like for them in a majority Christian setting?
It's probably hard for them to express themselves because they feel like, kind of how we would feel like if we were a majority Muslim.
Absolutely. I think it would be interesting to be Hindu and go to a high school football game. Do they still pray at Tijuana before the game to Jesus? I think that'd be pretty interesting to hear they still did it in my high school too. I think it'd be interesting as a Hindu to be experiencing that at a high school football game things too. Or I remember at Clemson when I was there after September 11th, people actually went and kind of attacked, at least verbally, Muslim students that were on campus because they felt like they had something to do with this bombing that happened and all this kind of stuff. So, I guess, coming back around, the idea is that yes, we should stand up for our faith. We should know that God is there and that God is there during the tough times. But I think another part of our calling is to be looking out for the least of these in some cases, meaning the smaller minority groups sometimes, because what if we were in that same situation? Kind of know what I mean? That was what I experienced in Egypt, was the other side of that. We weren't necessarily targeted or anything like that. And no, they did love us because we were Americans. It was really weird. We had heard horror stories from years before, but whenever they saw us, they said, "Obama, America, we love you!" Like that kind of stuff. It was interesting how somebody that had some sort of African roots, they just latched on. But, so yeah, I've never experienced the side of persecution like those folks in Garbage City have. Never. And you will never experience that in the United States either. But I think there are other groups that do experience that same kind of discrimination in our own country. Can y'all think of any examples like that maybe have come to mind as we were talking about that kind of stuff?
I have a friend who's Zaina. She moved to Charlotte last year. And what's it called? The wrapping for Muslim women?
A burqa. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And she didn't wear one, but last year she told me that she was going to decide to start wearing one, but she said she was kind of worried about what people might, think about her. And so I kind of just reassured her that I would think the same, as I've always thought of her, because she's my friend. But she experienced a lot of, I guess, I don't know, hatred to say, but kind of animosity and stuff like that.
Absolutely. I think it's important to just remember that these things do happen, and these are part of maybe not always our reality as white Christian Americans, but it is happening. And it is happening along religious lines as well. And that's a really good example.
Yeah, sometimes it feels weird to be a Christian, to walk through the halls of your high school. It feels odd maybe if you're not going to the party, or people will make fun of you, right? Think of how much weirder it must feel if you're actually called to pray during high school publicly. If you were a practicing Muslim, you would have to pray at some point during the school day. And how much weirder must that be? Just to do the regular practice of their religion, you're the only one. Imagine if you were the only Christian in your high school, and what that would feel like, and how set apart you would be. It's got to be an experience of it doesn't have there doesn't have to be any persecution at all, none, but you just feel it. You all automatically feel excluded at some points, and it happens across the world in different areas. We are very lucky to be in America, where we have religious freedom, but not everyone is as lucky as we sometimes.
We have religious freedom, but yet there are I'm going to say this anyway. There are issues right now in the forefront of American life that are right along these same lines that are happening as close as Tennessee. In New York City, you've heard all about these kind of things. So yeah, we have religious freedom, we say. As long as we're Christians, we have religious freedom. Everything's fine. I think it's important to understand the privileges that we do have, and then also to understand what others don't, and what we're supposed to do to be human beings, but also to be who Christ calls us to be. What are the two greatest commandments? Okay. Exactly. That's number 2. What's the first one? Okay. Say it. You got it. Honor your father and mother. That's in the 10 Commandments. Yes.
Yeah.
Jesus was questioned. Jesus was put on on display for a second. And this lawyer comes up and says, I've done everything that you've asked. I've done everything along and along. I've lived morally upstanding life. What else do I need to experience heaven? And Jesus says, this is the greatest commandment. Honor you got me thinking. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, strength. And the second is like it. You said it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Absolutely. So I think about the old song, "They'll know we are Christians by our love." It's kind of fitting for that kind of thought.
What does it mean to love your neighbor? Leave that open.
Yeah.
What does it mean for you? It's easy to say love your neighbor. Does it mean walking across your fence and not yelling at your dog next door? Their dog next door. Taking some cakes when they move in. That's nice. That's your neighbor. So who's your neighbor? We talked about the churches. Who's your neighbor? Besides the two people on the side of you in the houses. Who else could be your neighbor? Your friend? Good. Who else could be your neighbor?
Your enemy.
Right? Enemy can do it. Always gotta have the enemy as your neighbor. And everybody goes, oh, gotta throw that one in there again. So then you have to love your enemy. Good Christian precept. Who else could be your neighbor? A stranger. Good. Then not a friend or an enemy, just someone you don't even know. Could be a stranger. Jesus gives a good example right after the lawyer questions him. Then the lawyer's like, no, that's not good enough for me, Jesus. Those are great commandments, sure. But who is my neighbor? That's a really good question. And Jesus tells a story. Does anybody know the story that Jesus tells right after? Has anybody heard of the Good Samaritan? What happens in the Good Samaritan story?
I forgot which religious group.
Yep. He's from Israel, so he's a Samaritan,
Which would be Gentile.
Yeah, he is from Israel, so that man is.
He's like weak on the side of the road, and
Right.
I don't remember the first thing that walks by, but then a priest comes by,
Right.
and they both ignore him, and then like the religious group is not really, they're like conflict with the.
That's the Samaritans. Yeah, it's another
He
country.
helps them, and then he takes them to the little inn and feeds them and loves them.
Right, exactly. Right. And so then the end of that's the story that Jesus chooses to tell. After the lawyer's like, hey, who's my neighbor? Jesus tells that story. Why do you think Jesus would tell that story? It's a pretty good one. It's a nice story, but kind of leaves a lot open to interpretation. Why do you think he would tell that story?
You hit on it.
So like,
You said, I'm sorry, I don't mean to point.
Calls them out.
But it's really good. It's like, you did it! Yeah! That's a good point.
Right.
Why is he so... you said another religious group. Keep going with that. Why is it important that he talked about somebody that maybe... Why is it important that it was a Samaritan?
And they didn't like
A
Samaritans.
Gentile.
Really didn't like Samaritans at all.
Even though if you don't like someone, you should care for their well-being and you should treat them as you want to be treated yourself.
Yeah. You nailed it. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Even if it is among different religious lines. That's exactly the point.
And that's the end of the story. Jesus says, so who was this man's neighbor? And the lawyer answers, well, obviously it was the guy who helped him. Duh, Jesus. And then Jesus gives one of the great lines. He goes, go and do likewise. And that's when you go, okay. Now, so we all have to be someone else's Samaritan. Even though they may hate us, they may despise us, we have to care for them as much as we care for ourselves. That's that commandment. It's really, really tough. That's why Christianity started. How many people started Christianity? Religion. We're going to guess it. We're going to go with 12. 12 people or so. We got 12 disciples. Then it turns into 70 at some point, and then the whole book of Acts comes. There's like mobs of people who are all Christians. But it started, actually, if you want to get down to it, it started with Jesus.
Just from the feeling, can't sit here idle, just watching things change. feet in the sand line, and that slowly increased the decline. I can't even recognize the person you became, but it goes, you know, find a way. Gotta stop trying to be somebody else, not listening when they say to go. You know, finally, you know it's time to turn around and trust yourself to find a better way. It's time to trust yourself. Gotta stop trying to be somebody else, not listening when they say no. You know, finally, stop trying to find yourself to find a better way.
Any challenges, anything that you want to say, like, this? If not, it's okay. I just try to leave that open. That's the teacher in me. It's like,
To be more open-minded about
to be more open-minded about things.
to understand.
Good. Okay, to understand that.
How do you do that? What's another question? Sorry, it was your question.
Time's up.
What are we
Vibrating.
saying? What are we saying?
How do you understand someone who's
Uh-huh.
so
And
different?
like we have to do like a persuasive essay, and I'm doing one on how you should put like religion in schools and teach people about different religions.
Okay.
Respect for that.
Cool. Anything else? Good. We didn't really know what to say. We didn't know exactly what was going to happen whenever you came back and you were like, Travis got arrested, and we were talking about this. We didn't know if there would be like tears or like what kind of experience this was going to be.
Laughter. They arrested my wife. That would be a moment.
Yeah, we would cry.
Yeah.
And then we would go to the jail and fight for her.
And like Carly, you were concerned about your mom because she was in the bus that's being searched.
Yeah, true.
Okay, what happened there? Start time.
They were
My
searching
mom
cars.
was driving one of those. We told her we were going fishing.
And we're going fishing.
Yeah, it's like we're going.
We got here.
Very nice. Well, good. Well, I think we're over time. Sorry. I hope that y'all have a wonderful weekend.